Hello, friends, and welcome to We've Got Books. This is Ann Green saying howdy from North Texas, the Lone Star State where spring paints the meadows with bluebonnets, longhorn cattle chew their cud with contentment, and cowgirls lasso their favorite cowboys. My colleagues, Lana Newman Cruzy, James Yarborough, and I are happy you joined us.
Hi there, I'm James Yarborough.
And I'm Lana Newman Cruzy.
We've Got Books features a variety of genres to tickle your imagination. It is our pleasure to feature guest authors and their books, along with our own books. You'll become acquainted with real authors and learn why we write and how we create unforgettable stories. And now, James Yarborough is standing by to interview author Barbara Britton and her contemporary Christian romance, Escape to Whispering Creek. So grab your favorite drink and enjoy this rousing ride into the literary world. Take it away, Jim.
Well, thank you, Ann. Barbara, welcome, and we'll delve into the nitty-gritty of your book in just a second. But first of all, could you tell the listeners a little about yourself, please?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm coming from Wisconsin, right outside of Milwaukee, and I love the Badger State, but I did spend 10 years in Texas. I graduated from Baylor University in Waco, when Waco wasn't very cool like it is today. And then I lived in Dallas after I graduated. So I've spent some time in Texas. I've been married for 36 years to my husband, Rick, and we have 2 grown sons. When I'm not writing about Bible stories, I am teaching them to women and children. July here in the Midwest is about 75 degrees, so I try and get outside and walk a few miles or do yard work. I think my love of gardening comes from my old 4-H days when I grew vegetables and entered them in the county fair.
Well, Wisconsin weather sounds great to me, particularly this time of year and in the summer. We Texans try to vacation in a cooler state during July and August, or go from air-conditioned house to air-conditioned car if we can't get away, that's for sure. Our spring and fall are comparable to your summer, I think. By the way, you graduated from a super college, so congratulations. So how about your writing? Did you always know that you wanted to be an author? And how long have you been writing?
I never thought that I would be an author. Growing up, I enjoyed writing stories in school, but no one ever mentioned author as a career choice. I did well in creative writing in high school, but writing books for a living just never entered the conversation. I began actually writing in 2007. I had been modifying curriculum for teaching chapel at a local Christian school, and I just prayed for creativity to improve the lesson plans. And then I also received some ideas for stories. I sat down and wrote my first book in a year's time. So I finished that book in 2008, but it never sold. I actually wrote 4 books, and my 4th novel sold to a publisher. So my first novel was released in 2016. And if you do the math, depending on what year you choose, it was 8 or 9 years after I started writing that I had a book published. And during that time, I had a lot to learn about crafting a novel and finding a publisher.
Yes, that sounds very familiar. Certainly, we can identify with that. I think most of us authors, the road to publication can be long and rough. Your novel, Escape to Whispering Creek, is a contemporary romance. Have you always written in that genre?
My first novels were about little-known Bible characters. And some of those stories, I didn't even know those Bible characters were in the Bible. And I had been a Christian a long time. And I love writing about the Bible. But back in 2015, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And here I was living my dream of publishing my first book. And I'm doing edits and getting ready. And I was hoping God didn't call me home because I had worked long and hard to get that book published. I'm still here, praise the Lord, But after answering calls from my friends who had the same cancer diagnosis, I decided to write a book about a young teacher who had a breast cancer storyline. And I couldn't really do that in biblical fiction, so I wrote my first contemporary story. And I enjoy writing contemporary stories because characters can drive cars and use text messages and use all the modern technology. And in Escape to Whispering Creek, Emma drives from Milwaukee to Tennessee, and that would be unthinkable in Bible times. So Escape to Whispering Creek is my second contemporary novel.
So first you wrote biblical fiction and then contemporary romance. Do you find it difficult to write in several genres?
I think it depends on who you ask. An agent or publisher will want you to write in a genre where you have built a readership. When you write in a different time period or a different type of novel, you are going to lose some readers because people like to read in only one genre. And I found that to be true when I switched from biblical fiction to contemporary romance. I enjoy writing contemporary stories, but it's different than writing biblical fiction. Biblical fiction will always be my first love, and I am happy that it has gained steam in recent years with the arrival of The Chosen. When I was working on my first contemporary romance, my critique partners would ask me if the book was a romance because my characters weren't touching. And I had to laugh because men and women didn't show affection in public in Bible times. So I had to learn that it was okay that my characters in contemporary romance could hold hands or even kiss in public. So all in all, it's much easier to stick with one genre. But if the Lord places a story on your heart to share with readers, then by all means, write that book.
I certainly agree with you, Barbara. I write in several genres myself, and for the same reason. So why do you write Christian fiction?
Well, in the beginning, I didn't even know there was a Christian publishing world when I started writing. When I began writing about Bible stories, I thought I was writing Bible-themed young adult books for the mainstream book market. But then I later learned anytime you write about a Bible character, you're going to be in the biblical fiction category, and that's under a Christian fiction umbrella. So the fourth book I wrote was based on a Bible story, and I pitched that story to general market agents and editors. And they liked it, but they didn't know where they would put it on a shelf because they didn't represent Christian fiction. So I happened to enter a mentoring program, and my work was spotted by an acquiring editor for a Christian publisher. And my first contract arrived 8 years after I sat down to write a book, and it was from a Christian publisher. And I love writing Christian fiction because God shows up in a big way in the story, whether it's biblical fiction, romance, mystery, or whatever genre you're writing. And I can share how a character's faith in Jesus grows or is rekindled, or how their faith begins. And I shine a light on how amazing a relationship with Jesus can be. Hopefully that will encourage believers or make even new believers. There's a woman in my church who came to faith in Jesus by reading a Christian novel.
I'm glad you shared those stories. That's really inspiring and encouraging, I think, to any Christian fiction writer. What prompted you to write Escape to Whispering Creek?
Well, when you write a story with a breast cancer survivor, which I did in Christmas at Whispering Creek, you don't want it to be too heavy. And Emma was my comic relief for Samantha in Christmas at Whispering Creek. So Emma was the best friend who speaks her mind without a censor. So she was really fun to write. And I knew I would write Emma's story. The hard part was thinking about upsetting her world. So when I came up with an idea to rattle Emma, Escape to Whispering Creek was born. The second hardest part about writing in the same town with the same characters is remembering all the details.
I imagine that's true. I think listeners would like to hear your back cover copy of Escape to Whispering Creek. Would you read it for us?
I'd love to. Emma Uranova enjoys her office job until her boss disappears with the investor's money. To avoid the media storm and false accusations, Emma flees to Whispering Creek, Tennessee, to live on her best friend's secluded property. When a temporary position opens up in Nashville, Emma leaves small-town anonymity to pad her depleted bank account. With a handsome new boss and a steady income, Emma believes life is looking up, until she discovers she has transported the scandal in her backpack. Where is God when her life is falling apart? Wade Donovan is recuperating from a crash that sidelined him from the family's electrical business. Worse yet, his prodigal younger brother is getting the glory for Wade's accomplishments. Desperation and physical setbacks have him agreeing to let Emma help him manage the business office. But when trouble follows her to his doorstep, Wade must make some difficult choices. Sending Emma back to Whispering Creek may unknowingly place the woman he's come to love in danger.
Thank you. That sounds intriguing. Were there any personal experiences that you brought into the story?
At first, I didn't think there were, but part of my life story came out in Emma's life story. Emma's a Christian, but her parents are unbelievers, and that weighs on Emma's heart, and I could relate to that from my own life. I didn't grow up in a Christian household, but eventually I became a Christian, and one of my parents kind of resisted the faith for a while. I knew what it was like to pray that a parent would trust Jesus.
So were you instrumental in leading your parents to the Lord?
Well, my mom became a Christian first through Bible study fellowship, and then she took me and my sister to church when she became a believer. And then after I trusted Jesus, we prayed for my dad. It was a group effort with the prayer. And I would like to think I helped, but my dad said that he saw a change in my mom, and that is what led him to come to church with us and eventually trust Jesus as his Savior.
That's an encouraging story. How long did it take you to write Escape to Whispering Creek?
I like to have at least 9 months to write a novel. I wrote Escape to Whispering Creek in 11 months. I had some life events going on, which slowed my writing process. I have written books in as little as 5 months, but that was a continuation of a series where I had a Bible timeline and I had worked developing the characters. When I have a blank canvas, it takes longer to figure out the details and what happens next.
Well, it sounds like you're a veteran author. How many books have you written, Barbara?
Well, I have 10 published books, and number 11 will arrive in January of 2026.
Well, let's probe a little bit how you do writing. Do you have a theme in mind before you start writing?
When I begin to write a new project, I have a theme or something that I would like readers to come away with from the story. I recently realized that all my books have the theme of my very first novel, and that theme was God is in control, even in the chaos of life. I lived that theme, coincidentally, because I launched my first book at the end of my breast cancer journey, and that book was Providence Hannah's journey.
Well, can you share with us what you think you've learned in the course of your writing career?
Well, writing a novel is hard work. I had so much fun, during the years I spent learning how to write a book, but I had to learn craft and the lessons of publishing a book. You also need friends who are writers. My writing friends helped me develop my story ideas. They critiqued my writing. They helped me launch my books. Publishing can be a discouraging business, and you need people around you to lighten your day. Today, the role of an author has changed. We do more of our own marketing and publicity, which takes, as I say, time, talent, and treasure. Social media takes up our time. When I began this journey, there was no such thing as social media, websites, Zoom, podcasts. We have to take time for these things if we want readers to know about our stories.
Well, that's good advice, Barbara. Thanks for mentioning that. Certainly, social media and marketing take up an author's time these days. That's for sure. So, what other advice would you give to an aspiring author at this time?
I hold to the advice I received in my very first writing workshop. The author said to join a professional writing organization and get involved in their local group, which I did. And then she said to attend writing conferences where you can learn the craft of writing and network with other writers. So I did that too. And nowadays, many conferences are online, which helps with the cost, but sometimes that can impede on the personal networking. But one thing I also add is to save money, because it takes money to launch a book and get the word out about your story.
Those are all great points. Thank you. Is your next book going to be a contemporary piece of work, or are you going back to an historical time period?
I'm actually going back to the Bible, but it will be the first time that I am in the New Testament. On January 6th of 2026, I am launching a biblical fiction Bible study. I am going back to my roots of writing biblical fiction in short story form. And then there'll be reflections from my time that I spent in Israel in 2023. And then there'll be an easy study or devotional at the end. It's something new and exciting for me. And it's titled Across the Lake, Traveling with Jesus Around the Sea of Galilee. I don't think I'm finished with contemporary stories because I really enjoyed writing and reading them.
Well, that certainly sounds like a fresh look at Bible study, so we'll look for that. I think listeners will be watching for that. Where can readers purchase your books, Barbara?
My books are available at all the online retailers such as Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Google Books, Apple Books, and then libraries and bookstores can order them as well.
Do you have a newsletter or a website?
Yes, listeners can find out about all my books at my website, barbarammbritton.com. And I send a newsletter out once a month, and you can sign up on the books page on my website. And I'm also on all that social media on Twitter, or what they now call X, Facebook, and Instagram as Barbara M. Britton.
Anne Green here again. Thank you, Barbara and Jim, for a delightful interview. Once again, our time has whizzed by. Listeners, we do hope you enjoyed your time with us as much as we enjoyed having you. Join us next week when we interview well-known author Dana McNeely, discussing one of her favorite books. Also, don't forget to go to buzzsprout.com and enjoy some of our other podcasts with different authors. Again, I'm Anne Green with Lana Newman-Cruzy and James Yarborough saying goodbye for now and read a good book to keep those brain cells active. We hope you choose one of our fabulous books from We've Got Books. See you next time.